The next presentation is Volunteer to Career. And we have two dynamic speakers here. We have Alysha Ferguson, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for the last couple years, I would say. She is the Student Development Officer and Community for UTM Center for Student Engagement. And without her and her amazing team of students here, we wouldn't be able to let's get together, wouldn't be able to accomplish a lot of the initiatives. And so thank you to their support. Following that, we have Leah from Microsoft Canada, and she's the Director for National Teacher Engagement, and we're excited to hear the connection of how volunteerism connects to employment. So without further ado, I'm going to figure out how to get the slide going ready so that you can start learning. So here we go.
Hello everybody, my name is Alysha Ferguson, and as Ali shared, I work for the Center for Student Engagement at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and I feel very fortunate to be in my role to be able to provide community engagement initiatives for students here at UTM. In this role, I have the unique opportunity of working with community partners out in the Peel region, which is very much a passion of mine, in order to help students to think a little bit more locally about the role and impact that they have on the community, but also as an opportunity for them to gain some soft skills and to be able to think a little bit more about what their passions are, what their interests are, and how they can contribute to their community, both in a job as well as with volunteering. Today, my focus is going to be around you and what it is that we provide in order to think about why getting involved outside the classroom is important. And even though I speak from the university lens, I very much am passionate about talking about it from high school, middle school, even at a very young age, because those are the kind of conversations that will very much help your student when they decide to go to post-secondary institutions. If they decide to do that, will be able to start off stronger by being aware of why engagement is important outside the classroom. Often when students come into our office, they say, I get it, I need soft skills in order to get a job. And I'm sure you've been hearing conversations about this a lot today. And what I wanted to focus on is thinking about these 5 soft skills. And these are kind of the main ones that usually students or employers are saying that they're looking for, but focusing on the fact that these aren't something that can just be checked off a box. It's not about saying, I have leadership skills, I did this one thing, go me, moving on, I don't need to develop that anymore. These are ongoing developmental conversations, reflections, being involved and thinking about how these soft skills change as you grow up, as you get involved in different things. And therefore, it's important for anyone to really think about, okay, yes, I developed leadership skills on this one activity, but what does that mean when I'm in a different scenario? Or I may have the ability to work with that team, but how does that differ when I'm on a different team? And that's what we mean by soft skills. It's not about check boxes of saying, I've done this, therefore this will happen. It's about really thinking long-term about how you're gonna work towards that. At the university, we do offer many of our outside of classroom experiences with this lens of experiential education. And just basically, this means that you're actually doing an experience in order to reflect on what that experience means for you, and therefore what it is that you want to do next. And I think that this is important to note, because often when we are worried about doing out of classroom experiences, youth will think, you know what, maybe I'll just read about it, or I'll just Google how to be a leader. And that's not really the best way of learning. And very much doing and then reflecting how that learning meant something for you is where the learning is going to come from. That is because of this other theory, and I didn't want to talk too much about theory, but I love these theories because they're so simple and they get the same message across. And that is around understanding that kind of sweet spot of being able to actually learn something new. So this is a theory that a lot of educators use in terms of comfort zone, the zone of proximal development, and then anxiety zone. And what the zone of proximal development is that kind of happy medium between doing something too far out of your comfort zone or doing something just in your comfort zone. The proximal development is when the learning happens. So I like to use riding a bike and learning how to ride a bike. Your comfort zone might be when you have training wheels and you happily can ride your bike all day, no stress. But if someone told you tomorrow you're going to go on a ride on a highway, that would be the anxiety zone. There's no way you can do that out of being just on your training wheels. So how do we actually teach people, anybody, to ride a bike? We encourage them to try kind of that, you're still in your comfort zone, but let's move a little bit outside of that, which is let's take off the training wheels, but I will still hold you while you ride. And that's a very, very key message for parents and guardians who are hopefully watching to think about, is how do you have conversations with your child or with those that are in kind of your community to say, yes, you're in your comfort zone right now, and I don't want you to get to a point where you're in your anxiety zone, because that can be very stressful and scary. So let's try and get involved in different things so that you can find those little spaces where you can learn new things. And then the nice part is once you get into that educated proximal development, that then becomes your comfort zone. And once you've kind of expanded that comfort zone, then you're willing to get outside of that a little bit more, which is great. So why is volunteering important, and why does that matter? I think it's all about being able to work through challenges, being able to excel at something. But what I really love about this infographic is the piece around making the leap, and how that actually has a graph that goes up and down. And again, as a guardian, as a parent, being able to think and have conversations around, yes, the first step is dreaming about it, thinking about how you're going to do it, but then it's actually about trying it. And just like that experiential education model, it's about doing it and reflecting on it. And if you fail along the way, that's okay, because that's still working towards a mastery of something. If we all just stay in our comfort zone and say, I'm never going to try something because I'm worried about failing, we're never going to be able to see what it is that we can achieve. And if we can actually rise to that challenge in order to achieve mastery. So that's really, really important as well. Here at the University of Toronto, we do have a co-curricular record, and the reason for that is that we recognize that students do want to track ways in which they are involved outside the community and those buzzwords that they know that employers are looking for. So all of our programs do provide opportunities for students to actually gain these skills, but I want to say that at most, if not all post-secondary institutions, there are ways for students to get involved outside the classroom to gain these skills. And that doesn't necessarily have to be articulated directly in a co-curricular record, but they do exist. And you as a parent, you as a guardian, having conversations after someone's volunteered or gotten involved in something, saying, do you feel like you worked with a different team? How did that feel? What do you think that you got out of that experience? Will help them to get used to this lingo, to be able to go into a job opportunity and say, yes, I gained teamwork by doing X, or actually I've dealt with conflict because of a time I had to collaborate and it didn't quite go according to plan. So you as a parent can very much help frame these conversations so that it becomes a little bit more a part of their conversations that they have, and less of a scary, I'm going into a job interview and now I have to say all these buzzwords that don't really feel organic to me. Lots of parents say to me, every August we have a parent orientation and I do a similar kind of presentation to them, and they say, but will it take away from my child's education? Will being involved actually hinder their education because of the fact that kind of logically you look at school, you say, wow, that looks like a lot of work. There's no way that just volunteering out in the community is a good thing for them to do. And I say to parents, that's not true. And luckily I have some research to prove that, that actually says that if students are involved up to 15 hours a week, that can actually improve their grades. And the reason for that is that students are gaining time management skills. They're able to connect with their peers who are maybe in their classes or in different classes to work through kind of those motions of, you know, I have a paper due tomorrow, but I did also commit to something. So how can I work my schedule around that in order to make sure I get that paper done? I myself am a master's student right now while also working full time. And I find there's lots of Sundays where I say from 8 a.m. till 10 p.m., I have to spend this whole day writing this paper. But I know now that that's not going to help me. I actually do have to carve out the time to say these 2 hours is when I'm going to be studying or I'm going to be working. And the other hours I do have to devote to other things in order to have that balance, because over 15 hours, there's no way I'm just going to write a paper in that time. This is just a little graph that I have up in my office that I love to look at every so often. And it's just a reminder that getting paid for something is just a piece of the puzzle. And being able to find purpose in our lives is around a lot of other things. And I think as a parent or as a guardian, making sure that you're having the conversations of, do you actually like that? Just because you're good at it doesn't mean that you necessarily like it. Or does the world actually need that? I know that a lot of jobs that I thought I'd probably have one day probably don't even exist anymore. There's so much changing in our world that we don't necessarily need to say, you need to go do this job because that's the best job out there and you're going to get paid the most for that, because that job may become redundant in the next 10 years. And by that point, that child or that student has moved kind of in that direction and now can't think of what else they could do. So making sure that you're having those conversations of, what do you love? What are you great at? What do you think the world needs? And that can be around that community engagement piece and thinking about what it is that isn't equal, or injustices, or having civic responsibility to say, we do get to have a voice and be able to make a change. And then the final piece is, can we find a thing that you will be paid for that you're going to love? And I know that our next speaker is going to talk about that a little bit in terms of finding what it is that she loved outside of kind of what is expected of if you need to be educated a certain way in order to do that, or is it about finding something that you're really passionate about? So where can you start? I think the first piece is getting active in your community together as a parent, as a guardian, as an older sibling, being able to say, let's go out and volunteer, let's go out and find what you might be passionate about in the community, or just in general, what are your passions? Is it playing a sport? Is it going to a craft night? Is it going and actually picking up garbage as we go for our walk? How can we make our community better? And being someone in their lives that they do look up to, that's a key piece, is saying, let's do it together. And it's not about just checking off something saying, I did my 40 hours in high school. You can actually start younger than that and say, you're in grade 7 and one day you're going to have to volunteer. So let's go out and find some things that you might be interested in volunteering, versus making it something that you have to do. Make it something that people actually want to do, because we are lucky to be able to have a say in how our community looks, but it's up to us to actually go and get engaged in that community. Encourage your child to try new things, talk about those experiences, say, did that not feel quite as much as, or as good as you thought it was going to be? And that's okay to have that conversation and say, okay, do you want to keep trying it? Do you want to do something new? Do you want to build on that previous experience? Just, again, checking off a box of saying, I volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters, done, get me out of there. Well, why not maybe ask them, is there another leadership opportunity that you can have there? Is it there's something bigger that you could do for that organization? Or do you want to go try doing something new? Finally, working on time management. I think this is the greatest asset that parents and guardians can have for youth today, is having that conversation of, let's look at your schedule, let's prioritize what it is that you signed up for, why did you sign up for those things, how do we actually work a schedule around that? Time management is not around, okay, the next week I have a paper due, that means the next week I do nothing else but write that paper. It's actually around, okay, how am I going to make sure that I eat properly? How am I going to make sure that I go to the gym as well? How am I going to make time for my friends and my family, as well as all these other commitments that I want to be involved in that matter? And conversation starters, these are really simple. They were just some things that I thought about, but mostly just to have that conversation of, what sort of activities do you like, and not about because they'll get you the best job. It's what do you actually like doing? And just because you want to become a doctor doesn't mean you have to go and volunteer in a hospital. It can be other things that you enjoy doing that allows you to connect with the community. What are 2 things that you are grateful for that you have but nobody else or other people may not have? And how do you think that we could give that to other people? Is it around having a really great family and really great support systems? Okay, well, maybe you can go out and volunteer in the community to provide that to members of the community. When you think of our neighborhood, what could you do? What could we do differently? What could we do better? And then finally, just a fun question around the dinner table. If you won $1 million, who would you give it to outside of friends and family? And that's a good way to think about what other needs are there in the community and how can we actually give to those things. These are just some resources in the community. I highly recommend that anyone can Google volunteer centers and then kind of the city or the community that you're a part of. These are 3 that I definitely look into quite a bit to create my partnerships, but also I encourage parents and students after they graduate or before they come to university to go on these sites, because they're really great in terms of allowing people to check off what is it that I want to get involved in, or how much time commitment do I have, or what sort of different opportunities exist that I don't actually know about. And that's all. So I will turn it over to Leah.
You got a great quote there. You got to finish.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is a quote that I really love. If I look at the masses, I will never act. If I look at one, I will. You as a parent, you as a guardian, do have that one or two or three people that you clearly do care about, love. And if you look at them and think, how can I act? How can I find ways for them to get involved in the community, to both be community members of the future, but also ways that they can help develop those soft skills and find those passions in their life. It starts with one, and you definitely have the power to do that. So thank you very much for inviting me here, Ali. I really appreciate it. Hopefully something resonated. But if you want to follow up, hear more about what I do at U of T or anything else, feel free to contact me either by phone or email.
Thank you so much, Alysha. We are now going to get ready for our next presenter, and that is Leah. So just bear with me as we bring up her presentation. And definitely send in your questions as well too. If we can't get them to them today, we would promise we will collect all the questions, answer them, and then send them out through our Facebook, social media, and wherever we can find you, we will send it. Okay, so going on to slideshow. Hope you guys are all enjoying this as well too. So, like to invite Leah, again, Director from Education Strategy in Microsoft Canada, to tell you all about employment.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good late morning. My name is Leah Cicco-Remu, and I wanted to, before I start, thank Allison and everybody at Let's Get Together for putting on this day. There's a lot of work that goes around organizing environments, setting up environments like this, and I just want to recognize that Allison and Monica have done a great job bringing us all together. I am a teacher, so I wanted to start with that, and my job at Microsoft is to empower, support, and celebrate great teachers across Canada that are doing transformative, disruptive things in the space so that the teaching we deliver is relevant to the kids that are learning today. I want to highlight and start with something. I'm here as a volunteer. I think it's so important because at the end of the day, it's all about empowering our kids to do great things. And as parents, so I'm here as a volunteer and I'm here as a parent. As parents, it's our job to make sure that we are directing, supporting, encouraging in a very safe way our kids to be their best selves. And ultimately, we want them to be independent and successful members of the community. And please, let's not discount happiness. We want them to be happy. We want them to have jobs and we want them to contribute. However, the world is transforming. Education is very different today than it was 50 years ago, than it was even from the way we were taught. The world is different. Look at the technology, look at the world. How are we today preparing students for the world that is today, as opposed to giving them skills and delivering curriculum or pedagogy for a world that is no longer exists? We need to be responsive. We need to be reactive. We need to be there for our kids to understand what they need and to give them what they need to be successful. So what can we do? What are the skills that they're going to need? I've seen just from the list of your questions and from what I've seen from what Allison has presented to me, that a lot of your questions are around how do I navigate my child through post-secondary education? What could they do in high school? What about accreditation? How do I prepare my child? Yes, education is definitely important. That piece of paper is definitely important. The skills you get are still important. However, the global competencies that we're looking at when I think of my job and the environment that I work in and the people that I work with globally, we're looking at soft skills as well. And how do we assess those soft skills? So, the first page of the report card, you see things like critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, communication. These are the core four. In my field, we're looking at adding to these global competencies. But these skills are incredibly important, again, to match, to align for the skills that the kids of today are going to need for the careers of tomorrow. It's not about getting that A. What does that A mean in creativity? What does that B+ mean in critical thinking? How do we assess that? How do we activate these critical skills in our children so that they will be successful, so that they will get those jobs, so that they will be independent, and ultimately so that they will be happy? Let's look at them. Let's look at how to get some of those skills into the kids' toolkit. That's what I like. I like to look at it as a toolkit. So the academics are there. Definitely, we're still in a world where academics are important. We can't discount that. Again, hence, let's look at all of the questions you guys are asking, because these things we're freaking out as parents. How do I make sure my kid gets into this school? How to make sure my kid gets a job? How about volunteering? Because we can't discount that learning happens everywhere, especially with all the technology that the kids are now bombarded with. I really don't have to go to history to learn about the War of 1812. You know what? I can search it. I can learn about what I'm interested in on my own. It's our job as educators, as policymakers, and as parents to make sure that these kids are learning safely, that we're creating the right environment in order for them to do that. I really, truly, and strongly believe that volunteering provides another venue, another road for these kids to activate some of these skills that we just talked about, those global competencies. Because again, learning is happening everywhere, and we have to capture that and make sure the kids are doing it appropriately. We have to direct it in a way that's going to, again, get them that job, help them be successful, independent, and happy. I can't underscore that enough, because this is their world. I heard a quote the other day from a colleague of mine. He said something like, it's their world. We're just holding the keys. We have to really be conscious and be mindful of that. So what are we looking for in volunteer opportunities? What are they going to garner? Workforce ready skills, definitely. Global citizenship and personal development. Help them unlock interest. What is going to motivate them? Who are they? You know, as parent, I'm guilty of this too. Again, how'd you do in history today? What'd you do at school today? Did you do well in your test? We bombard them with these questions, but we really also have to take some time and get to know who they are. Get to know why they're here. What is it that's going to motivate them to find their place in the world and to make whatever change, big or small, that's going to really unlock who they are. So I want to talk about a bit about my team, because I'm sure, you know, I'm here representing a big company like Microsoft, and we recruit, and it's a great job to have. I'm very grateful and I'm very thankful for the job that I have. And I'm really lucky to do what I do, but I'm a recruiter. I'm a people manager. This is just one of my teams. And the reason I wanted to share this with you is because each and every one of these wonderful, wonderful, active, smart, go-getter teacher, Microsoft Learning Consultants, they're all teachers. They're all teachers, they all have their degrees, but that's not why I hired them. Their degrees got them to the door, but it didn't get them in the door. So when I recruit, I'm looking, yes, do you have the skills to perform? Absolutely. But I'm looking deeper, because a lot of people have the skills to perform. That doesn't mean they're going to be necessarily successful in the role. So each of these young people here have wowed me in some way. They've done something outside of school. My question is, what have you done? It's always, what have you done? Who are you? What motivates you? Are you a go-getter? What activates you? These are the skills I look for in an interview. I don't focus on the education. The education is a given. Yeah, okay, great. You got a teaching degree. And the question is, and who are you? Volunteering provides students a way to figure out who they are, to make connections. I like what Alysha said about, you know, if you're going to be a doctor, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to work in a hospital. There's so many other ways to get those skills. You need to be a really good doctor that you're not going to get in an academic setting. And each one of these folks has done something really, really interesting. The one in the center, just for an example, Mario, when he came in, yes, he's a teacher, he's got all that great stuff. However, he had put together an incredible presentation where he did a YouTube video and went out and talked to kids around what they wanted to learn and what they wanted to see in their environment. That to me is extending the thinking around, I'm a teacher and I want to work to help other teachers in the country. That to me is activating student voice. And that was a different approach. It was divergent to what the role was looking for. That got my attention because we need that creative kind of thought. He was hired. He's doing incredible. I just promoted him actually, but I wonder if his ears are ringing. But again, that's what I look for. So to recap, I really wanted to highlight a few things. We all want to make sure our kids succeed. We all want to make sure that they're going to get that job or whatever it is that they want to do that's going to make them make sure that they contribute to society and that they're happy. We have to be mindful and respectful that the world is a very different place than it was from when we were growing up. And even though sometimes we forget that because we want the best for our kids, and again, I'm guilty of that too, we need to be open and listen to them and not just dangle the keys in front of them, those keys we talked about, but make sure that we're giving them the opportunities to figure out who they are in a safe way. We have to really let go of the thinking that the way we were taught is going to be reflective and is going to be relevant for the way the kids need to be taught today. We need to raise confident, creative, collaborative problem solvers that can effectively communicate their ideas. That doesn't mean being able to write a test and getting an A. Learning happens everywhere. Learning happens outside of schools. We can give them opportunities to develop those soft skills by encouraging them to volunteer. We want thoughtful, mindful, loving children that are really going to love the world and love each other. I really, really believe this. Again, the degrees get us to the door, but not in the door. I want passion, grit, an independent, go get it done attitude with an open spirit, because we're all going to grow. And the minute you stop growing in any role, then it's time to move on. So if I had to give some thought around how I would try to figure out who my child is and what's going to activate this child and what's going to unlock learning for them and watch this lovely little being that's come through me grow, I would want to know how they'd want to spend the day. And that doesn't include watching TV and watching videos. But you know what? I thought about that. And I thought, you know what? What if you want to do pottery, but you want to make a video? Okay, well, let's incorporate that. Because again, their world, this is how they communicate, this is how they learn, this is how they grow. So find out, what do they still feel strongly about? What interests them? What makes them happy? What would that be? And then do some digging. Connect and align whatever response they give you to activities in your community and give them the opportunity to express those interests. You never know what's going to happen, and you too can grow alongside them. Our children are gifts. They're here to teach us. I tell myself that every day. My daughter is a gift. She's my greatest teacher, and I'm very honored to be her mother. So my quote, and I love the fact that Alysha had a quote, it must be a theme here today. Oh, the places you will go. Again, let's keep them safe. Let's show them the road, and let's be open and willing to go with them. Thank you.
Wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, Leah, for making time out of your busy day to come join us and share. You know, the progression from volunteerism, which is extremely important, and I'm a huge advocate of volunteerism, and there's no age where you can start. You can start when they're 2, 3, 4, getting out in the community. I think the key part is parent involvement, which is why we're hosting this expo today. It's National Parent Involvement Day, and we want you to get involved. And it doesn't necessarily have to be at your school, although it is encouraged. It's getting involved at home, getting involved in the community, and you know, working together in community. If I could add in my quote, which is, you know, alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. And that's from a student who has gone through her share of struggles with learning disabilities, but through the support of parent involvement, through key educator and the community, she was able to go far. And that's Helen Keller, for those of you that know her story. And so if there are any, well, parents and children, I would actually go back and read that story and share that story with your children, because that is a story of, you know, success. And together, that's what we're all doing here today, is helping you so that you can help your children, and know that there's a lot of help out there and resources out there.